In this chapter, we'll be discussing about capital requirement under Basel III. This is an advanced area, and you might find this discussion in this chapter a bit advanced and beyond your comprehension, but don't worry, you will not be asked very deep questions in this area in bank interviews. We are providing the information first just for the sake of completeness. Just focus on the questions we will provide at the end of the section. If you can answer those questions, that is sufficient. The entire chapter will be advanced, so just listen to it. Do not go deep into it, just for the sake of information. You should be preparing for the questions we provide at the end of the chapter. If you can answer that, capital requirement under Basel III will be, you are good to go for the interviews. So first of all, let us see capital. So capital, we discussed about this briefly. Capital in normal accounting means promoter funds. For example, if you start your company and you put in 1 crore of your own money and borrowed say 10 crores from bank, that 1 crore is known as capital. Capital is the promoter's contribution. And capital is very important because, as we said earlier, it reflects the borrower's stake in the business. So if the business fails, the borrower will have more to lose. Okay, so he'll be more interested in making the business successful. So what happens if the company makes losses? So a company with large capital, we discussed this earlier also, a company with large capital will be in a better position to absorb loss and still continue. Okay, or else it has to wind up. So banks also are companies, so they also have capital. In public sector banks, since government is the owner, so that capital, the share capital, comes from the government usually. Public sector banks means where government is the majority shareholder. Others can also contribute. For example, if it's a listed bank, it can raise capital from public also, but in general, the majority shareholding, more than 50%, comes from government. So banks usually get capital. Public sector banks usually get capital from government. So the larger the capital is, the more stable banks will be. That is very important. You should remember. So higher capital will give banks the ability to withstand losses and financial shocks. Okay. And in the earlier chapter, we already discussed that risks are inherent in banking. Risks are inevitable. That's why we only manage risks. We cannot eliminate risks. So banks which have higher capital will be in a better position to manage risks. They can withstand losses better, and the financial shocks that come across in the system, banks can better be able to withstand if they have higher capital. So regulators like RBI and BIS, that's the Bank of International Settlements. So you can think of BIS as a central bank to the world. Okay, just like RBI is a central bank to our country, BIS is a central banker to the world. So regulators care very much about banks having adequate capital, and they prescribe suitable rules so that banks should have this so much so and so minimum capital. Only then they will consider it as a safe bank. Okay, and you also have to remember one thing, that banks and other financial services providers are highly interconnected. In a normal business, say cement companies, if one cement company fails, it doesn't impact other company because it is standing on its own. Same as the example for steel industry or any other companies. Usually each company operates on its own. Even though it operates in an industry as a whole, the failure of one company really doesn't hurt or influence another company. Banking, the financial sector is very peculiar. Failure of one usually will have a tremendous impact on the sector as a whole, because all of these are highly interconnected. Okay, so regulators are very strict on banks complying with minimum capital requirement, because if a bank fails, it will have an effect on the entire ripple effect on the entire financial sector. So the Basel III rule introduced the following measures to strengthen the capital requirement. So earlier, compared to Basel I and II, Basel III introduced more capital buffers. So let us see some terminology here. This will be quite advanced, so don't be worried if you don't understand. It's fine. This is a very advanced area, almost at a postgraduate level. So don't worry too much about it. Just for information, capital conservation buffer. This is designed to absorb losses during periods of financial and economic stress. That is, banks will be required to hold a capital conservation buffer of 2.5% to withstand periods of stress. So that brings the total common equity requirement to 7%. That is 4.5 plus 2.5%. And the capital conservation buffer must be met exclusively from common equity and the banks or financial institutions that do not maintain this will face restrictions on, say, dividend payout, share buybacks, and other activities. Then there is another buffer called countercyclical capital buffer. This is in a range of 0 to 2.5% of common equity, right? And then this will be serving as an extension of the capital conservation buffer. So banks are required to maintain a minimum Pillar 1 capital to RWA, risk-weighted asset ratio, CAR of 9% on ongoing basis. That is other than the capital conservation and the counter-cyclical buffer. Then there is higher common equity Tier 1, Set 1, that constitutes an increase from 2 to 4.5%. And that is set in stages: 2013 3.5%, 4% from 14, and 4.5% from 15. Then the minimum total capital ratio remains at 8%. And the addition of these buffers, the capital conservation buffer, increases the total amount of capital a financial institution must hold to 10.5% of risk-weighted assets. We'll see what risk-weighted assets means shortly. So of this, 8.5% must be Tier 1 capital, and Tier 2 capital are harmonized in Tier 3 capital. Abolished. All these are new additions to the Basel III Accord compared to 1 and 2. Then there is a leverage ratio. Basel III has introduced a minimum leverage ratio. This is calculated by dividing Tier 1 capital by bank's average total consolidated assets. Now banks have to maintain a minimum of 3%, excess of 3% under Basel III. So Basel introduced two liquidity ratios. One is LCR and NSFR. So liquidity coverage ratio will ensure that sufficient levels of liquid assets, high quality liquid assets, are available for 1 month survival. This is in case of severe stress scenarios. And then net stable funding ratio provides resilience over long-term time horizons. So a bank should compute Basel III capital norms in the following manner. There is a Tier 1 capital ratio, that is common equity Tier 1 capital divided by credit risk weighted assets plus market risk weighted assets plus operational risk weighted assets. Similarly, there is a formula for Tier 1 capital ratio and CRAR, total capital. So the components of capital, total regulatory capital, will consist of sum of Tier 1 capital and Tier 2 capital. Tier 1 capital includes common equity Tier 1 and additional Tier 1. So there are some limits and minima we should remember. It has been decided that all banks operating in India should maintain a minimum total capital of 9% of the risk-weighted assets. Okay, so CRAR 9%. Of this, common equity Tier 1 must be at least 5.5%. Tier 1 capital must be at least 7% on ongoing basis. And all this, it might be confusing to you. Don't remember any of this. I'll tell you what to remember. The elements of Tier 1 capital are also provided here if you want to go through. The common shares and stock surplus, statutory reserves and all. Risk-weighted assets. This is important, okay? Just pay attention here. Risk-weighted assets is an important concept. Risk-weighted assets means for banks, the assets are loans, okay? Banks give loans to borrowers. So that is an asset to bank because it will recover it in future. So it is an asset, okay? So each asset, that is each loan, is assigned a risk weight. For example, 100% for corporate loans, 50% for mortgage loans. Each category of loans will be having a risk weight assigned to it. So the degree of risk weight will be assigned by RBI. So assets like cash, those are also assets. Okay, anything that is good, you can think of anything it's a good that is which will receive funds or which already in the form of cash, that is an asset. So cash and government securities all are assets. So they will not have any risk weightage. So those can be 0%. On the other hand, very high risk investments like venture capital investments, they will be assigned highest risk weight. So let us see a sample calculation. So for a triple rated A client, the risk weight is 20%, which means banks have to set aside own capital of 1.8 rupees for every 100 rupees loan. Okay, say for example, there is a very good company, a prime borrower, top class borrower. If that company has taken a loan of 100 rupees, 20% of 9% of 100. What is this? Where is this 9% coming from? This is coming from the CRAR. That is the minimum capital adequacy ratio. 9% of 100, that is 9 rupees. And on that 20% risk weight, that is 1.8 rupees. So for every 100 rupee loan given to this company, banks have to set aside a capital of 1.8 rupees. So similarly, in case of 100% risk weight, for example, capital market exposure, say bank has invested some of its money in the stock market. Such investments carry 100% risk weight. So if it has invested 100 rupees in the capital market, banks will have to keep aside 9 rupees capital on the loan on that investment in the as part of the capital aside to follow the Basel norms. Okay, so this table shows how it's going. So say for example, cash is 11 crores, then it has a zero risk weightage. So the risk weighted exposure or risk weighted assets, RWA, sometimes you hear the term RWA, risk weighted assets, is zero in this case, because even though the cash, no matter how much it is, it has no risk. So we are assigning a risk weightage of 0. So multiplying 11 times 0%, it is 0. Then there are some government securities. The weightage of 10%, 5-year government securities. So say this bank has 20 crores investment in government securities. So 10%. So 20 crores now turns into 2 crores. It's risk weighted exposure. Exposure is 20 crores, but risk weighted exposure is 22 crores. Similarly, lending to banks, this bank has lent 30 crores to other banks. So that risk weighted 20%. So risk weighted exposure will be 6 crores, 13 to 20%. This bank has total home loans portfolio of 52 crores. It has lent total 52 crores worth of home loans. Those are given weightage of 50%. So the risk weighted equivalent of this is 52 into 50%, that is 26 crores. So like this, all categories of loans and assets are taken. They are multiplied with corresponding risk weight percentage to arrive at what is known as risk weighted exposure. For this company, for this bank, the total risk weighted exposure is 123 crores. Okay. So the significance of capital adequacy ratio is, capital adequacy ratio will be calculated by dividing Tier 1 capital and total capital by risk weighted credit exposure. You need not remember Tier 1 capital and all this. Just remember, for simplicity, capital. We discuss what capital is. Capital is the core capital, the promoter's contribution. Usually it is the government capital in case of public sector banks. Okay. So dividing that capital by this risk weighted exposure which we calculated now, that is the capital adequacy ratio. So what is the capital adequacy ratio formula? It is capital divided by, for correct term it should be Tier 1 capital, okay, total capital. Okay, but you can for simplicity you can just take capital divided by risk weighted exposure, the total risk weighted credit exposure. So that gives you the capital adequacy ratio. So capital adequacy ratio measures the bank's capital in relation to the amount of its risk weighted credit exposure, and that CIR, if it is below the minimum statutory level of 9%, it indicates the bank is not adequately capitalized. It means it's a risky bank. Okay, so higher capital adequacy means the bank will be having a greater ability to absorb losses and to meet unexpected shocks in the financial system. Okay, so the questions that you need to be prepared in this chapter. This is a tricky chapter, advanced chapter, but don't focus on all we have discussed. Just prepare for these questions. What is meant by capital? We discussed that. That is the core amount invested by the promoters. Okay. Then why is important that capital is high? Because a company which has higher capital will be in a better position to absorb losses, and this is particularly important. Why is higher capital important for banks? Because banks are dealing with public money. Banks are taking public money as deposits and doing business with it. They are lending to other companies. Should the loans fail, it will affect the repayment to the depositors. So a bank which has higher capital will be in a better position to absorb losses. Why do regulatory bodies like RBI and BIS place a lot of importance on adequate capital? We discussed that. What measures is Basel III introduced to strengthen the capital requirement? This is Basel III, specific to Basel III. There are a few points. This is not that particularly important question. If possible, just go through it. What is capital conservation and countercyclical capital buffers also are a bit advanced. If you are from a MBA finance background, just prepare these two questions. Otherwise, for a normal general recruitment, you need not prepare this. What is the minimum Pillar 1 capital to risk weighted asset ratio? That is 9%. What is meant by risk weighted assets? We discussed the sample calculation. And what is the significance of capital adequacy ratio? So banks with higher ratio will be, this capital adequacy ratio will be in a better position to absorb losses or withstand financial shocks.